Bill Maher thinks WNBA rookie and #1 draft pick Caitlin Clark is being targeted by other players because she's not a lesbian and she's white.
I think it's natural for a megastar to come in and people say, I'm kind of tired of hearing about it.
It's everything. It's women are catty. The league is very lesbian, and she's not. And there's race. There's a lot of going on.
Caitlin Clark, the superstar breaking records left and right, is packing her bags and heading to Europe. But before you jump to conclusions, let me stop you right there. This isn't your typical athlete on the rise story. No, this is about something much deeper. And once you hear what's really going on behind the scenes, you won't look at the WNBA the same way again. Here's the thing. Bill Maher just dropped a bombshell that's turning the sports world upside down, and it's got people asking all kinds of questions. He's not just talking about Clark's game on the court, he's exposing what's been happening off the court. And believe me, it's the kind of locker room drama that makes a reality TV show look tame. We're talking about tension, controversy, and more politics than you'd expect from a basketball league. Why is one of the league's top talents heading for the exit? Spoiler alert, it's not about money. The reason is way more complicated, and yes, a little bizarre. But before we dive into the juicy details, do yourself a favor like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make sure you're ready for what's coming next. You won't want to miss out, because the truth behind Caitlin Clark's decision is about to shake up the WNBA like never before. This isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about survival in an environment that might be more about who you are than how you play. So sit tight, because what we're about to uncover will leave you speechless, and it could change the league forever. Trust me, you'll want to hear this. Bill Maher, known for his provocative takes and unfiltered opinions, recently sparked a major conversation in the sports world by revealing the real story behind Caitlin Clark's surprising decision to leave the WNBA and sign a contract with a European basketball team. While fans and analysts initially assumed that her departure might have been motivated by financial incentives or a better career opportunity abroad, Maher's revelation suggests something far deeper was at play. According to him, Clark's departure was driven by her inability to fit into the WNBA's cultural mold, and that cultural mismatch affected her on and off the court. The WNBA, where approximately 60% of players identify as lesbian and 85% are black, has cultivated a unique atmosphere that celebrates diversity and inclusivity. However, this culture, according to Maher, can also be exclusive in unexpected ways. Clark, who is white and straight, did not fit the demographic boxes that many in the league's community prioritize, and that fact reportedly played a significant role in how she was treated throughout her time in the WNBA. Her skills and accomplishments as a player were undeniable, but the league's broader focus seemed to overshadow that. Instead of being celebrated as a rising star, Clark found herself reduced to a mere commodity, a player whose primary role seemed to be generating revenue for the league. The WNBA, Maher argued, was more interested in using her as a marketing tool than in recognizing and nurturing her talents. The league has been criticized in recent years for focusing more on pushing social and political agendas rather than the actual sport, and Clark became a casualty of this approach. As a result, she opted to leave the WNBA and head to Europe, where she believes she will be valued for her skills and contributions on the court. For Clark, the decision was simple. She doesn't owe the WNBA anything after how she was treated. Maher's commentary wasn't a casual, off-the-cuff observation. He delved deep into the underlying issues surrounding Clark's decision, emphasizing that her struggle within the WNBA wasn't just about basketball. Clark, by all accounts, was thriving on the court. She was one of the league's top players, breaking records and attracting a growing fan base. But off the court, she was battling something much larger, a league that didn't seem to want her. Clark's decision to pack her bags and move to Europe wasn't about a minor disagreement over contract terms or the lure of a lucrative new deal. It was about survival. Maher exposed the toxic environment within the WNBA, where both players and league officials appeared more focused on making Clark feel out of place than on celebrating her contributions. At the core of the issue, Maher suggested, was that Clark didn't fit into the WNBA's image of the ideal player. She didn't check the boxes the league seemed to prioritize being white and straight. She was seen as an anomaly in a league that prides itself on promoting diversity in terms of race and sexual orientation. Maher pointed out the hypocrisy of a league that consistently preaches inclusivity, but in reality, marginalized one of its best players because she didn't fit into their preferred narrative. Rather than highlighting her talent and success, the WNBA seemingly shunned her, diminishing her role and making her feel like an outsider. From the very beginning of her career in the WNBA, Clark faced an uphill battle. The league's cultural norms and its close-knit community of players didn't seem to have a place for her. Her fellow players, many of whom shared different backgrounds and lifestyles, treated her with an air of indifference or worse. Clark encountered snide remarks and subtle slights from teammates and opponents alike. It was almost as if she had walked into a high school clique, where acceptance was based not on her abilities, but on how well she fit in socially. Instead of being celebrated for her incredible contributions to the game, Clark was treated like an outsider who didn't belong. This dynamic was especially jarring given that she had been one of the most exciting players to watch in years. Her performances were drawing attention and driving up ticket sales, something the WNBA desperately needed. Yet instead of receiving praise and recognition for what she was bringing to the league, Clark was often pushed to the sidelines. It was as if the WNBA was almost embarrassed by her success, preferring to keep the spotlight on players who fit their desired image. The tension between Clark and her fellow WNBA players came to a head during the 2024 season, particularly in her interactions with Angel Reese, another prominent player in the league. One moment that became infamous occurred during a game when Reese made a provocative head slap gesture aimed directly at Clark. To many viewers, this was more than just typical trash talk between two competitors. There was a personal edge to Reese's actions, as if she were trying to send a message beyond the court. Some fans even speculated that Reese's actions were calculated, part of a broader effort to humiliate Clark publicly. Angel Reese has always been known for her fiery competitiveness, but her interactions with Clark seemed to go beyond standard rivalry. This wasn't just about two players trying to outdo each other on the court. There was an undercurrent of tension that left many wondering whether Reese's behavior was driven by something more. Reese's gesture made headlines and left a lasting impression, sparking conversations about whether the animosity between the two players was rooted in more than just basketball. As if the tension with Reese wasn't enough, Clark found herself in yet another controversial incident involving Dejanai Carrington, another player in the league. During the first game of the 2024 WNBA playoffs, between the Indiana Fever and the Connecticut Sun, Carrington made a move that many fans and analysts viewed as deliberately aggressive. She poked Clark in the eye during the game, causing an injury that left Clark bruised and visibly shaken. Although Carrington claimed the eye poke was accidental, the timing of the incident right in the middle of a crucial playoff game led many to believe otherwise. Clark, who had already been struggling with her shooting performance that night, now had to deal with an additional physical setback. The eye poke raised questions not only about Carrington's intent, but also about the broader culture of hostility that seemed to surround Clark in the WNBA. Was this just an unfortunate accident, or was it part of a larger pattern of mistreatment? Fans and commentators alike were left to speculate, and the incident only added to the growing sense that Clark was being unfairly targeted both on and off the court. In addition to dealing with confrontations from fellow players, Clark also faced issues with officiating throughout the 2024 season. According to Maher, the referee seemed to have a bias against Clark, and fans were quick to notice the uneven treatment she received. Game after game, Clark found herself on the receiving end of questionable calls. Fouls that seemed to appear out of thin air were regularly called against her, leading to frustration not only for Clark, but for her supporters as well. Even commentators, who typically avoid wading into controversial territory, couldn't help but raise their eyebrows at some of the officiating decisions. Maher emphasized that this wasn't just a coincidence. The WNBA, he argued, was complicit in allowing biased officiating to undermine one of its best players. Clark's opponents often seemed to get away with much more leniency on the court, while she was constantly penalized for minor infractions. This pattern of officiating only added to the growing sense of unfairness that Clark had to contend with throughout the season. But the challenges Clark faced weren't limited to her interactions with players or referees. The racial dynamics at play within the league also became a major point of contention. Clark, a white player in a league where the majority of players are black, found herself at the center of a much larger cultural conversation. Players like Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas, both of whom have had public tensions with Clark, added fuel to the fire by bringing up concerns about racism within the league. Reese, who has had a history of friction with Clark dating back to their college days, didn't hesitate to speak out. She took to social media and her podcast, Unapologetically Angel, to share her experiences with racism, specifically calling out members of Clark's fan base. Reese claimed that she had received racist threats and comments, and she directly attributed much of this negative behavior to Clark's supporters. Her accusations only deepened the divide, sparking heated debates about the role of race in the WNBA and in women's sports more broadly. Alyssa Thomas, another prominent player, also entered the conversation. After the 2024 playoff series between the Connecticut Sun and the Indiana Fever, Thomas publicly stated that she had experienced more racism during that season than at any other point in her career. Her comments added another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. Thomas described the playoff series as a racial battleground, where tensions ran high not just because of the competitive nature of the games, but because of the broader racial dynamics at play. The WNBA, feeling the pressure of these public accusations, released a statement condemning the racist behavior of certain fans. However, by the time the league responded, the damage had already been done. The public narrative had shifted, and Clark found herself in the middle of a firestorm. No matter what she said or did, she couldn't escape the controversy. Despite her best efforts to distance herself from the actions of a few misguided individuals, Clark and her fan base were being painted with the same broad negative brush. Faced with this overwhelming level of scrutiny and division, Clark was forced to address the situation publicly. After her team's elimination from the playoffs, she held a press conference in which she attempted to clear the air. Clark made it clear that the racist comments and threats being directed at players like Reese and Thomas did not represent her or her true fan base. She condemned the behavior of those who were perpetuating hate and tried to refocus the conversation on basketball. However, the damage had already been done. The social media narrative had taken on a life of its own, and Clark found herself caught in the middle of a controversy that had little to do with her actual performance on the court. The perception that Clark's supporters were racist wasn't just an online issue, it became her reality, affecting her interactions both on and off the court. The controversy seeped into her relationships with teammates, opponents, and even fans. Maher pointed out that what should have been a healthy sports rivalry between Clark and other players, like Reese, had devolved into something far more toxic. The accusations of racism, combined with political tensions, turned what could have been an exciting narrative for the league into a battleground of ideologies. In the face of all this drama, it's no wonder that Clark ultimately decided to leave the WNBA behind and pursue a new opportunity in Europe. For Clark, the move wasn't just about finding a new team or a better contract. It was about finding a space where she could focus on her game without the constant distractions and controversies that had taken over her life in the WNBA. In Europe, she would be valued for her basketball abilities, not for how well she fit into a political or social narrative. The decision to move overseas was about more than just basketball. It was about preserving her peace of mind. Maher's take on the situation goes beyond just Caitlin Clark's personal experience. It speaks to a larger issue within the WNBA itself. The league, which should have been celebrating one of its biggest stars, instead allowed itself to become mired in controversies that had little to do with the sport. The racial tensions, political narratives, and overall chaos overshadowed what should have been a shining success story for both Clark and the league. In the end, Clark was left with no choice but to leave, and the WNBA lost one of its brightest stars as a result. In Europe, Clark will be able to focus on what she loves, playing basketball, without all the extra baggage that came with being part of the WNBA. For her, this move represents a fresh start and an opportunity to reclaim control over her career. Meanwhile, the WNBA is left to reflect on how it allowed one of its most talented players to slip through its fingers. Whether the league will learn from this experience remains to be seen, but one thing is clear. Caitlin Clark is ready to move on, and Europe is ready to embrace her. Bill Maher's revelations about Caitlin Clark's decision to leave the WNBA for Europe have sparked a conversation that extends far beyond basketball. What started as a discussion about her on-court performance has evolved into a complex narrative involving race, identity, and the culture of the league itself. Clark, who was one of the WNBA's top talents, faced unique challenges that went beyond the typical pressures of professional sports. Instead of being celebrated for her skills, she found herself at odds with the culture of the WNBA, where race and identity politics seemed to play an outsized role. Maher highlighted the tension Clark faced in a league where a large portion of players identify as Black and lesbian. Despite her undeniable talent, Clark didn't fit into the league's prevailing cultural identity, which led to subtle slights and overt hostility from her peers. Instead of embracing Clark as a rising star, the league appeared to reduce her to a marketing tool, alienating her in the process. This alienation was not merely professional, but deeply personal, as Clark faced scrutiny and mistreatment both from fellow players and even from officials on the court. The WNBA's emphasis on inclusivity and diversity ironically contributed to Clark's feeling of exclusion. Maher pointed out the hypocrisy of a league that claims to champion diversity, yet marginalized one of its most talented players for not fitting into a preferred narrative. The tension reached a boiling point in the 2024 season, with Clark facing increasingly physical play, biased officiating, and public confrontations with players like Angel Reese. These incidents culminated in a toxic environment that left Clark feeling more like an outsider than a celebrated athlete. Clark's decision to sign with a European team is more than a career move, it's a statement. She chose to leave behind the politics and controversies of the WNBA to focus on the sport she loves, in an environment where she believes she will be appreciated for her talents. Maher's commentary reveals how the league's preoccupation with social narratives may have cost it one of its brightest stars. As Clark begins this new chapter in Europe, she leaves behind a WNBA still grappling with its own identity. Caitlin Clark's departure from the WNBA serves as a wake-up call for the league. It must reflect on how it handles its players and the narratives it prioritizes. For Clark, this is an opportunity to start fresh, free from the distractions and divisions that clouded her WNBA experience. Whether the league will learn from this episode remains to be seen, but one thing is certain: Clark's journey is far from over, and Europe is ready to welcome her with open arms. Thanks for tuning in. We'd love to hear what you think, so share your comments down below. And if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to stay updated on all our latest posts. See you next time.